Hello, and welcome to the Community Floodplain Solutions Incentive Programs Overview. My name is Julie Kuntz, Communications Specialist with Snohomish County and the Community Floodplain Solutions Program. Community Floodplain Solutions, or CFS, is a collaborative effort between the county and more than a dozen organizations, all working together to provide benefits for farm, fish, and flood interests. Some of you may have reviewed the flood hazards video already and noticed you live in an area of an existing or potential flood hazard. We have created this second presentation to provide a high-level overview of the landowner incentive programs and flood relief options available to you and your neighbors. Your guide today will be Snohomish County Planner and CFS Program Manager, Jessica Hamill. Jessica, I turn this presentation over to you.
Thank you, Julie. So beginning in the summer of 2021, we will identify properties along the Lower Skykomish River that are eligible and best suited for this multi-benefit land conservation approach. We are doing this work in partnership with the Tulalip Tribes and Washington Farmland Trust to provide options for fish, farm, and flood interests. You may be asking yourself, why incentive programs? Well, CFS relies on acquisitions and other land use agreements to allow people to divest from high-risk areas, recuperate money for unusable land, and find ways to reduce losses to agriculture as well as river habitat. This land is critical to provide the footprint we need to advance CFS efforts. We have state, local, and federal funding available to support a variety of incentive programs available to landowners. In order to organize our limited capacity and funding resources, the county is currently developing a Skykomish floodplain land strategy, integrating the following information: Washington Farmland Trust farmland conservation prioritization to guide acquisitions and easements for long-term agricultural conservation. Tulalip Tribes conservation priorities for the purchase of property for salmon recovery, and flood risk reduction priorities identified by the recent flood hazard studies conducted by Snohomish County. You may have heard about these if you watched the flood hazard study video recording. As part of this undertaking, we are developing a spatial tool as shown in this image you see in the slide. This tool will allow us to overlay flood, fish, and farm priorities to see where there is overlap and guide the use of funds. This tool is most important for CFS partners to better understand where multi-benefit opportunities exist and what conversations to have with landowners. CFS partners are working with willing landowners to develop a multi-benefit easement and acquisition approach along the Skykomish River that will focus on properties with the highest risk of repetitive flood loss and the greatest potential for farmland preservation and salmon recovery. The approach requires that we consult with partners, review new and historic river modeling data, as well as seek public input. All these steps are necessary to determine the areas best suited for future work. The county follows federal and state guidelines to acquire eligible properties. Property owners will not be forced to sell their property, and willing participants who qualify will receive fair market value as established by an authorized appraiser. We recognize the process can be long and frustrating, but please know we're committed to working together to find fundable solutions that provide the greatest benefits for all. There are 4 primary steps used to implement this approach. The first step would be use the decision support tool to assess the fish farm and flood priorities, also known as a public benefit potential. This is the tool I talked about on the previous slide. The next step would be to work with willing landowners to acquire a property. Then we would remove any existing development rights to preserve the property for flood risk reduction, habitat restoration, and agricultural viability, or some combination of the 3. The final step would be to delineate areas for farming, flood risk reduction, and habitat restoration. You can see an example of this in the concept shown on this slide. The streamward portion has been reserved for long-term restoration, in the form of native plantings and log jams. The higher, drier portion of the property that also includes roadway access would be preserved for long-term agricultural conservation. This slide is an example of the steps and a general timeline for a land conservation process. We would begin by working with willing, voluntary landowners to determine their level of interest. If a property owner is interested and willing, we would then work with that property owner to order an appraisal and review the conditions of the site. Once the appraisal is complete, we would then work with the property owner to develop a purchase and sale or easement agreement. And depending on the conditions of the site, we would perform assessments, including assessment of water rights or hazardous materials. And the final step in the process is closing escrow. We can work with willing landowners to purchase just a portion of the property or all of it. Grant funding requires voluntary participation. Keep in mind the process takes time. Expect a minimum of around 9 to 10 months, and this is the same for every property. If you are willing and interested, please review your title to ensure everything is as you expect it to be. Oftentimes we discover the title to a property does not reflect what a landowner thinks it should, and it can delay the process further to address those issues. In order to accomplish a multi-benefit approach to land conservation, we are looking at using a number of existing, underutilized, and completely new tools. There are a variety of tools we can use, and some are site dependent. A few are outlined on this slide, including the most common one, which is the complete transfer of ownership to a public entity for the property to be used for flood risk reduction, habitat restoration, or agricultural viability, or some combination of the three. Another tool I have mentioned before is easements that allow a section of a property to be preserved for either flood mitigation, restoration, and/or farming. We are also hoping to pilot a channel migration easement program on agricultural land. If you are interested in knowing more about this pilot opportunity, please reach out to CFS Info or sign up for office hours after you watch this video. We are also looking for opportunities to put agricultural land back into production and provide multi-year leasing options that provide security for farmers, as well as allow them to realize long-term benefits of implementing conservation practices. CFS partners also have a variety of other incentive programs available for farmers, Streamside residents, and residential landowners. I'll give a brief overview of some of these options in the next 5 slides. The Washington Farmland Trust's mission is to protect agricultural land for farming. To accomplish this, the Land Trust works with landowners to purchase their farm's development rights. The Land Trust uses tools like agricultural conservation easements, which are designed to limit future development and non-farm uses without restricting agricultural operations. To help ensure the land remains affordable to future generations of farmers, the Washington Farmland Trust can include additional restrictions designed to increase the easement's value to the existing landowner and lower the land's future purchase price for a farm buyer. In some circumstances, the Land Trust also purchases at-risk farmland with the goal of returning it to private ownership by selling to a local farmer. This approach is called buy, protect, sell. The trust works with willing farmers to buy their property, remove the development rights, and place the property in long-term agricultural conservation. When the trust is ready to resell the farmable area, they will accept applications to purchase or lease the property. If there is an existing tenant on the property, the trust will give that tenant the first opportunity to purchase that property. As an example, the Reiner family sold their farm to the Washington Farmland Trust, who will conserve the tillable land, shown in the lighter shades of green, using a conservation easement, before selling it back to a farmer. The easement will ensure it can only be used for agriculture in the future and will make the farmable land more affordable than it would otherwise be at traditional market rates. The Trust is also working to transfer ownership of the habitat areas, shown in dark green, to the Tulalip tribes. This will create benefits for fish and wildlife and saves the farmer who buys the tillable portion from having to buy an additional 100 acres of land they cannot farm. Climate conditions contributing to increased risks from flooding and erosion continue to damage the viability of agricultural operations, and local food production is in need of support. The Snohomish Conservation District and Snohomish County are working together to implement the 2019 Agricultural Resilience Plan, as well as the county's agricultural initiative, and help preserve viable farmland. As an example, the Conservation District and CFS partners are collaborating on a number of new agricultural resilience projects in the Lower Skykomish, as well as other areas of Snohomish County. Many of these projects are in the early stages of development, but focus on finding ways to hold water in new habitat features and simultaneously improve drainage to farmland. We are also looking for innovative ways to protect farmland from flood damages. Please visit the Snohomish Conservation District's Agricultural Resilience page for more information and to see what workshops are coming up on topics like livestock, water, and technology. If you're a Streamside landowner, Snohomish County, in partnership with the Conservation District, provides a variety of resources to Streamside landowners in unincorporated areas, including technical assistance, native plant restoration guidance, educational workshops, print materials, and site visits customized to the needs of your property. All resources are designed to help improve water quality and aquatic habitat. To reduce future disaster claims, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, maintains programs that provide funding to state and local governments for eligible mitigation or corrective activities. Qualified activities include home elevations, home relocations, and the acquisition and removal of structures in high-risk areas. To learn more, please visit our Technical Assistance webpage. We have done some of this work in the Lower Skykomish in 2019, as well as some areas in the Tualco Valley just southwest of Monroe. Now I'll turn it over to Julie Kuntz to wrap us up. Thank you very much for your time. Julie?
Thank you, Jessica. As you just saw, Snohomish County and CFS partners have lots of tools available to help you find relief against flood loss, protect farms, and our natural resources. If you have specific questions about your property or would like to learn more about acquisitions and other incentive programs, you can schedule a virtual office visit with the team. Look for a link available on the CFS project webpage. If the link for the virtual office hours is no longer available, you may email us at any time at cfs.info@snoco.org. We look forward to talking with you soon. Thank you for your time.